is Jeremy Gardner, venture capitalist and entrepreneur.
Well, Tony, did you ever think you'd be keynoting a Bitcoin conference?
No.
Me neither.
No. Is that what we're doing?
I guess so. We're not talking about any other cryptocurrency. So,
welcome everybody. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Tony, when did you first discover Bitcoin?
I was reading about the chaos of Silk Road when that was all happening, and I was fascinated with the payment partner they had. It was obviously Bitcoin, and there was an anonymous side to it, but also just the idea that it was very fast, it was international, and it seemed like that to me was the future of finances. And so I immediately researched, how do I buy Bitcoin? I wasn't on Silk Road, but I did buy Bitcoin in 2012.
Well, it's amazing because
Thank you.
Silk Road was what drew me to Bitcoin, but in the opposite direction. So I was like, oh, Silk Road's awesome, but this Bitcoin thing's just too weird for me. It actually took me a couple more years after the Silk Road was shut down to get interested in the actual technology underlying Bitcoin. And so once you discovered it, what did you do?
I helped, pretty much. I didn't do much with it. I was watching it, obviously. Actually, I don't know if any of you heard Scott Harrison talk about charity water. I think it was yesterday. I was holding on to my Bitcoin, and charity water was the first charity that I knew of that accepted Bitcoin as a donation. And so, in my infinite wisdom, I gave them 4 back in 2012. At one of their fundraisers. I was the first one to donate Bitcoin because I thought it was cool, but I wish I had held out before.
Donate your Bitcoin!
I love charity water, and I know that they cashed it in quickly, so none of us benefited from the great rise of Bitcoin.
Well, so for me, what's really interesting is that you got into skateboarding in '78, right? That's when you first started. And when did you go pro?
It was, 1982, so I was 14.
But it took a while for skateboarding to go mainstream. It wasn't like, kind of Bitcoin became pretty big pretty quickly in terms of the attention, the price appreciation, but skateboarding took a while.
Absolutely. So when I started skating, it was at the tail end of a wave of popularity, but when I say wave, it was considered more of a fad or a trend. It was like, surfers were choosing skateboarding when the waves were flat. And so when I got into it, it was sort of already dying. But I was watching the Dogtown crew, and I saw how they were doing aerials, and that's what drew me in. Because I thought those guys are flying, like they are literally flying out of swimming pools, and I want to do that however I can. I was super small, super skinny, and I tried to fly and ended up knocking my teeth out, getting a couple concussions, but eventually figured it out. And then as I got really into it and basically devoted all my time to it, it was the least popular that it could have been at the time. So when I turned pro, it was literally me filling out a contest entry form and checking the pro box instead of the am box. That was it. Like there was no contract offer. There was no celebration or anything. It was more like, oh, well, you moved up to the pro categories, and now you're competing for $100 first place. But to answer your question, skateboarding went into another boom of popularity in the 80s, and that's when, a lot of it was from Back to the Future. Back to the Future was a catalyst for people to get into, it was a catalyst for people to get into skateboarding. And then it enjoyed a wave of popularity again, and kind of died quickly in the early 90s, and then that's when the X Games came into play around 1995. And I would say with the X Games, that's the first time we ever had an audience for skateboarding. It was like a home audience, and that's when it was like a tipping point of skateboarding's here to stay more than ever. And then we released our first video game in 1999, and I feel like with those two things, was the perfect storm of people understanding what skateboarding was.
So you persevered. I mean, talking about tipping points, I mean, for me, this moment in time, like right here, right now, kind of is that tipping point for Bitcoin. It's felt like we've had those before, where there was this mainstream understanding or adoption, but we've never taken over a city. I mean, Miami, Bitcoin has taken over Miami this week. It's incredible to see. I mean, I've been in this industry for almost a decade, and this is just a moment where, you know, Paris Hilton's DJing at a Bitcoin conference at one of the biggest nightclubs in the world, and there's massive Bitcoin behind her, and pretty much the audience is all Bitcoiners, and they come from every culture, every background, and it's just like, this is now part of the zeitgeist. And it's happened fairly quickly, but there have been these ups and downs, the same sorts of ups and downs that you're speaking about with skateboarding. And I've seen people come in and out of the industry and dismiss it as a fad. But what kept you going in those moments, those downturns? Because there probably were times when there wasn't like money to keep you going.
There were many times when there wasn't money. I just loved it. I loved doing it. I felt like I was always improving at it. I think that's what I loved most about skateboarding, was that there was always something new to learn. It doesn't matter how good you are at it. You can still improve your skills, you can still learn new techniques, there's still new tricks being developed. And so that's what always pulled me in. And even through the slow years, I was able to skate, maybe not so much for a living, but I just found time to ride my skateboard because that's what gave me the most joy. So in those slow times, I just kind of hustled and did whatever I could to make ends meet. At one point I was doing exhibitions in amusement park parking lots. We weren't even in the amusement park. We were like confined in a parking lot on some janky half pipe. And I was doing that 3 times a day for $100 a day for a week, and that paid my mortgage. That was it. Like, it was just whatever you could do, and I wanted, and for me, I was still living the dream. Like, I was still skating for a living. It was a meager living, but I was still doing it. But it was just a passion, and I feel like that's where you're at. And you want to talk about counterculture going mainstream. Skateboarding took decades to be on the radar of mainstream media or acceptance. Bitcoin's only been around 10 years, a little bit more than 10 years. And you've taken over a city. I think your trajectory is a little bit faster than ours.
Well, we have a monetary component that's pretty compelling, and so it makes it a bit easier. But for me, you know, you were one of my childhood heroes. So first of all, it's just such an honor to be on stage with you and having to get to know you over the past few years. But I remember really looking up to you as a kid because I looked at skateboarding culture, and you know, it was a bunch of misfits, miscreants, especially in my town. You know, we were harassed by the cops, and I looked to you, and I saw this guy that was part of this counterculture, but you weren't like a hardcore punk. You weren't like getting hammered, and I feel like there was this big punk outlier culture that even within that counterculture, you were kind of an outlier. Is that right? Is that?
A little bit. I think it was more also my age. So when I got into it and when I started being successful, you know, I turned pro at 14. Most of the other pros were older, like 18, 20-ish. And so I was this weird kid with this weird style. They used to say that I did circus tricks because I was more focused on tricks than, you know, looking cool when I did it. And so, yeah, it was definitely, I was an outsider in this outsider activity, which was isolating, but at the same time, it gave me a fire to prove myself. And so once skateboarding got a little more popular, I already knew what it was like to be an outsider. I already knew what it was like to get a lot of negative feedback. So I just pushed through. And so, yeah, you're right, absolutely. But also, I embraced the idea that skateboarding was for misfits. I felt like an outsider and a misfit as a kid. So I found my community and my tribe in skateboarding and at the skate park. And I still advocate for that. You know, skateboarding is a place to belong, no matter who you are or where you're from. I'm proud that it's come this far. It's been crazy, but yeah, to answer your question, I definitely, I think I was so hyper-focused on being good at skateboarding that I wouldn't allow the distractions to interfere with that in terms of partying and sort of going too far in excess, because it was like, I saw my peers partying the night before an event, and then they couldn't skate the next day. You know, and it was like, skating is what brought us here. Skating is the reason that we came to this town. How could you let that slip through your fingers? That was one of my attitudes.
I think there are a lot of people that are nursing hangovers from that. You know, it is remarkable to see how, you know, an industry can bring people together. I mean, Bitcoin has always done that. I mean, I remember the early days of crypto when I was, you know, one of the younger entrepreneurs, CEOs, and I would often be at like a speaker dinner, and I would be the only liberal in the room. Like everybody was an anarchist or cypherpunk or libertarian, but they all accepted it. There was this sense of acceptance towards a shared mutual goal of getting to where we are today and just constantly taking the industry forward. And I want to go to your video game, because obviously that was this landmark point in time where all of a sudden millions of young people and old were suddenly really exposed to skateboarding for the first time. And just like I think this weekend is this huge catalyst for people really appreciating the breadth of this industry, what was that like, that moment where you got approached to make a skateboarding video game with your name on it?
Well, it was exciting. It was also a daunting idea that somehow we're going to emulate skateboarding in a video game. And I was excited because I grew up playing video games, and I always loved technology. So the last video game that had been around was Skate or Die for Commodore 64. Old people, let's hear it. There had been there was a huge gap from anything that included skateboarding, except for the arcade game Top Skater. So when Activision approached me about doing a game, they already had the engine going, they already had little minimal tricks, basic tricks, ollies, kickflips and stuff. And when I saw their engine, I thought, this is it. This could actually represent skateboarding well, you know, given my input and the resources I have and all the skaters that I know. I feel like we can make this something. The goal for the video game was to make it something that skateboarders would be inspired by a PlayStation to play. That was it. Like that, as far as I was concerned, that was a huge market success. That skaters saw it, they were proud of it, and they're like, I want to play that game. I need to get a console. And then little did I know it would resonate way beyond skateboarding and just video gamers in general. And then before we knew it, we were on to the sequel. And I feel like that was the moment where I realized we had something way beyond what I imagined. It was when they started talking about doing a sequel.
Right, and then many more after that.
Many more, yeah.
Do we have a new one coming?
Well, we just released last year International Skater 1 and 2 remaster. We do not have anything officially. I know there have been rumors, but I'm here to tell you nothing is official right now.
I'm ready. I need a new one. You know,
do you guys to spam Activision? Try to get the ball rolling?
Or just buy Activision.
Yeah, it's like buy Activision.
Hostile takeover by Bitcoiners. And as that video game kind of went mainstream in the late 90s and early 2000s, do you think it changed the industry? Skateboarding, did it bring it to a broader audience?
Absolutely, yeah.
And was there a shift in the demographics at any point where you kind of noticed, oh my God, this isn't just, you know, a bunch of young white guys from California?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely changed. It got much more inclusive. There was a lot broader spectrum of people that were interested in because they played the game, and hopefully because we had good representation in the game as well. And so it really leveled the playing field, and suddenly you saw people coming from the most unlikely places to be successful skaters. And yeah, it was wild. I mean, I still can't believe that we got to do that. We got to do it 20 years later, he got to remaster the first two. And a lot of people identify with that game. It got them into a certain type of music, or got them into even counterculture at all.
I mean, your first video games were the soundtrack to my early teenage years. And then,
There are right now 3 bands that only play THPS covers.
so they're THPS.
That are touring actively, well, soon, but they were touring actively.
That's incredible. And so, I think there's a lesson here. I mean, that gamification component of skateboarding, obviously it's a sport, but making it accessible at a video game level is actually a lesson we can draw from Bitcoin. That gamification component, where you can create, games where people earn Bitcoin or really kind of understand Bitcoin from a more accessible level than, buying it for the first time. Would you agree with that?
Sure, yeah.
I really find...
Jeremy Gardner's Pro Hodler?
I was going to do Jeremy Gardner's Pro Dater, but learn how to use Tinder. But I think we could do something with Bitcoin too. Now, for you, you are a skater, but you do so much more than that. And what was it like expanding beyond just your brand as a skateboarder? Because this is something I've done. I started a skincare company. We worked together on that. And it's not easy breaking out of that kind of mold kind of understanding people have of you. How were you able to move beyond just being a skateboarder?
I think that a lot of that came with the recognition that I got through video game success, and suddenly I realized that my name was just not my own anymore. It was more of a brand, and I was able to branch out and do endorsements and promotions, and also to affect change with doing public skate parks. And it was something that it kind of happened all at once. I would say right after the success of our first 2 video games, where suddenly I was getting offers from McDonald's and Doritos and telecommunications companies, and things got crazy. And I think that the idea that I was an outcast early on in skateboarding and took a lot of hate prepared me for that moment when suddenly I was the king sellout, and I was labeled as such. And it was like the hardcore skate community sort of rebelled against all of that. And I did what I did. Like I didn't change my value system to be any of those endorsements. I used to eat at McDonald's, I still do. Making a cheese biscuit, and so I still enjoy. It was just more like, oh, this is awesome. These companies that I enjoy are actually paying me to endorse them, and so I just pushed on. And I think now when people talk about big sponsors in skateboarding, it's Nike, it's Mountain Dew, it's all of those things. And
anyone who's big in anything is now their own brand.
Right, but no one is getting any heat for that.
No.
Because that's just where we've come, and it shows how much people have embraced skateboarding on a mainstream level. So I guess I just got lucky to receive all of that flack in the early time of my life.
Well, you paved the pathway for other people to do what you do, and I think it gives athletes and professional figures and whatever they do, it gives them a bit more longevity, because you don't need to be winning competitions necessarily to do what you love, as long as you kind of maintain a brand that is authentic and that people love about you. It becomes about more than just the sport.
All I really wanted to do was represent skateboarding well. So when I had the opportunity to to be in advertisements and things like that, I want to make sure that the skating's authentic, that it's not just exploited. They're not using radical dude, super gnarly. It's not that kind of thing. It's more, this is who we are, and it's been a blast. And because of that, I've been able to get leverage with creative control and approvals, and I just did this big subway campaign, and I was very much involved in the creative of that, and I'm proud of it. It's funny and it's fun.
And so, for the Bitcoiners out there, or the non-Bitcoiners out there, who are trying to kind of make their way in this industry, who feel like they may not fit in, or may not be what a Bitcoiner looks like, what advice do you have?
What does a Bitcoin look like?
Like something like me, it's kind of scary sometimes, but we're getting a bit more diverse.
I think it's just more at stake to stay true to your passion and following it through thick and thin. I feel like I would gladly ride my skateboard any day of the week for free because it's one thing that I've enjoyed most as an activity. And now I just happen to get paid a lot of money to do that. And I get paid a lot of money to talk about it. So it's been a wild ride, but at the same time, if you're doing something that you truly love, you're not really working. And so if you're in some facet of the Bitcoin world and you really enjoy what you've created or the technology you're following, I think you should stick with it, even if it's not the most financially successful in the beginning.
Well, the money often follows, I find. If you're really passionate,
It seems to be following Bitcoin.
Let's keep the number going up. Everyone go buy right now. And you accepted Bitcoin for the skate park project.
Yeah. We have for a little while now, and I think if anyone goes outside, there's a QR code on the ramp, but the foundation website is skatepark.org, and we are taking Bitcoin donations, and our mission is to provide public skate parks in underserved areas. We've been doing it for almost 20 years. And we have helped to fund over 800 skate parks now. And
one in my hometown.
so there's actually a big push to get one in Miami proper right now. So I'm really, that's the work I'm most proud of, and selfishly it gives me more places to skate. So.
And how much money does it typically take to open a skate park?
It varies. It really depends on what the footprint looks like, that they want to do it, and if they're going to do concrete or modular. But I would say on the low end, $50,000. On the high end, up to $500,000, $1 million.
So you're telling me, in theory, that if every attendee here gave like $5 or $10, we could maybe open a skate park here?
Yeah, we need approval from the city. But
guys, I think we could do that. You know, there's a link on my Twitter that I just retweeted from the Giving blog. Tony will retweet it as well. I think we could get a skate park built in Miami, and I think that could be a really great initiative.
Yeah, anyone wants this for a big donation, I'm down. I'm gonna ride it, but you can have it after I ride it.
Yeah, mine too. So guys, let's do some good here. I think that could be a great initiative. You know, philanthropy's always been a huge part of what I do in crypto. It started an educational nonprofit. You know, just ran a massive fundraiser for Burning Man, which is an incredible counterculture as well. But I think, you know, if there's a lesson to be learned here, it is always okay to join a counterculture, to be a part of it. You don't need to fit the niche that maybe or the typecast associated with a brand. You can create your own brand within that space and carve out your own niche. I think Tony's done that. I've done it to a much lesser extent. But guys, this is an incredible industry, an incredible community, and thank you all for being a part of it. And thank you for being on.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Jeremy. That was awesome. Guys, right now, there is going to be a demo at the half pipe outside and a 30-minute break. It will be broadcast here on the TV, but of course, if you'd like, you can go outside and check it out. Enjoy, guys.